Ronald Deegan described the cognitive science as the study of the brain's capacity for processing information and for learning. And since learning information, knowledge is at the heart of a teacher's profession, I think it only makes sense that we understand and apply the how and the why behind students' capacity to learn. And in this way, with this knowledge, we can capitalize on the brain's natural processes that will help our students learn to their maximum capacity. And this really should affect how we teach. And a couple areas that I can think of, and that our different articles presented in videos, was one in how we present the material. Secondly, we should incorporate more experiential learning. This is a strategy of teaching that really complements the way that our brains work. Also, everyone learns differently and at a different rate. And so we could make use of Howard Gardner's contribution of multiple intelligences to inform our teaching styles. And lastly, even teaching students how their brains work can help them become better learners. Benedict Carey and Deborah Prieg bring out this suggestion, and whether it's they have better study habits, or whether as teachers we test more often, quiz more often, give more mixed review, that can benefit our students. Now, with the knowledge of cognitive science, we also can come to understand how trauma and how stress affects students' brains, and then thus how that affects their learning in school. Because who we become and how our brains develop is impacted by our environment, and that is also makes children very vulnerable to negative experiences. And the most damaging kinds of experiences are those that are chronically negative, and because it really does change a child's brain. One way that this impacts learning is through downshifting, where students are in class and they're under stress, trauma, and they are only selectively paying attention. They are in kind of the lower functioning out of the lower and more automatic regions of their brain. This affects their memory, it affects their language, affects their grades, it affects their ability to pay attention. And their learning is also affected by the adaptive style that they use or have developed to cope with their trauma. And these can become barriers to learning. Flannery talks about how this can really set them up for failure, even though it helps them cope. In the learning setting, it can really be negative, whether they are use the hyper arousal adaptive style, where they're always in fight or flight. They can be very aggressive and angry, or a disassociative adaptive style, where they're just tuned out. But there is a lot of hope for interventions and what teachers can do to through trauma-sensitive teaching that can really make a difference. Dr. Laura Boyd talks about how the brain has such neuroplasticity, where it has the ability to change and to heal. Motivating students to learn can be one of the biggest challenges that teachers face on a daily basis. One of our articles brought out how motivation to learn really is a natural instinct. But getting students there seems to be the trick. But when students are intrinsically motivated to learn, which means they have the internal, self-driven desire to learn, that's when learning is really fun. And students' motivation or intrinsic motivation increases when they feel like they have the capacity to learn. Now, there's also extrinsic motivation to learn. That's where external factors, environmental factors, rewards, the promptings of the teachers, whatever, can is also has an important part in motivating kids. Whether sometimes it's maybe not the most interesting task, where they're having to master basic skills. But once they do that and put the work in, then that can make other higher levels of learning more enjoyable. Now we know that just because a student has good grades, turns in all their work on time, and doesn't have any behavior issues, doesn't necessarily mean that a student has that inner drive to learn. We want kids to be engaged, where they have that, where they're focused on learning. They really want to learn something, and that is not necessarily automatic. So we need to encourage that by incorporating different kinds of strategies into our learning, into our teaching practices. One way that I would these different things that we've learned over the course of this semester that I think would be important for me to incorporate in my future classroom would, number one, would be building meaningful relationships with our students. Carol Tomlinson said that teachers are the key to student motivation, whether for good or for ill. And I want to be a kind of teacher who would motivate students for good and for their benefit. I also want to give students more control and autonomy, make use of that motivator, whether it's through project-based learning or maybe more student-directed learning. I also would foster mastery goals or learning goals, helping kids find that sweet spot where they are focused and just having fun with learning. Also, I want to be the kind of teacher who would set high expectations for my class, but also communicate the fact that I'm never going to give up on anyone. And finding that those kind of level of challenges that are not too hard and not too easy. That's what's where students is the best place for students to be motivated. I also would want to teach a growth mindset. Carol Dweck's focuses on that. And also the use of UDL, Universal Design for Learning. There's a lot of interesting concepts there. 5 key critical concepts that I want to focus on that really stood out to me as we researched and the different theories and theorists. These are 5 very quickly that I want to bring out that are important to me. The Cantor's assertion, Lee and Marlene Cantor asserted that teachers must be able to get their personal needs met. I don't believe that this is selfish or self-centered, or as their critics profess, that it's just about having a class full of conformists. But just as we talk about how autonomy and choice motivates learners, I think for me, this would also motivate me as a teacher, where I don't feel powerless to deal with the challenging aspects of teaching or dealing with the most challenging students. I can get my needs met and insist upon those things happening in my classroom. And I also know that I can get help from parents and from administrators to help me accomplish those goals. Number 2, the second critical concept would be Jerome Bruner's will to learn. This goes so much along with what I just discussed in motivation and engagement, but this was really a lot of his work about how we get interested and what we get good at. And also the power of a student and teacher relationship, fostering curiosity, and setting mastery goals or learning goals rather than performance goals. This is all Jerome Bruner's work. It's very exciting and interesting to me. Also, B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning and his use of positive and negative reinforcements. As I learned about this not only in psychology, but this semester in this course, this really, I believe, will become the foundation for my classroom management strategy. Number 4, Lev Vygotsky's zone of proximal development and the more knowledgeable learner, and his concept, which is also Jerome Bruner's concept of scaffolding, is really important to me. I believe that we need to really, through that scaffolding, through finding that right level of degree of challenge, provide that we can provide the clarity that students need to be successful in their learning, and so that they can become independent in their tasks. And this is really important because will become the basis or foundation for practices that will help me and help my students to strive for high goals, and to find the challenges that will really motivate them to learn. The 5th critical concept would be Jacob Conan's concept of teacher awareness and his with-itness, and also using the flow and the timing of the classroom activities and instruction to minimize misbehaviors. And this is important to me because I see how good planning, deep knowledge of the subject, and well thought out routines and transitions will really minimize misbehavior and maximize learning. And also, for me, this with-itness is a strength that I feel that I have, and I want to make good use of it to be the best teacher that I can be. This last semester has been very interesting. All the work that we've covered and done has just been so important for me. It's exposed me to many ideas and researchers and the research that I was never aware of before. And so this is a good foundation for building on, will be a good foundation for building further knowledge and making more and more connections. Also, this semester has really helped me kind of develop a initial teaching philosophy that I know that I will be building upon, and also gave me exposure to many resources that I will continue to access in the future. Thank you.